Number 19. Kid, you were good.
No! No, please let me go. I won't tell, please. Please. Are you gonna hurt me?
Pain purifies steam. Fear too, so you understand.
What is he?
There is a dark evil behind the Catholic Church. It hides itself behind grand cathedrals, fancy robes, and elaborate ceremonies. But underneath, there is a corruption so foul, its stench can no longer be ignored.
Just issued its report, it found evidence of more than 300 predator priests, all accused of sexually abusing
more than 1,000 victims.
They protected their institution at all costs.
Some very disturbing allegations made by one of his own archbishops.
The alleged cover-up involving Pennsylvania's clergy stretched all the way to the Vatican.
This church is a criminal enterprise.
In the past weeks, two stunning revelations have been made concerning how extensive the child abuse cover-up is within the Catholic Church. First, a 1,400-page grand jury report from Pennsylvania revealed the church knowingly protected 300 predator priests who had abused thousands of children. Then, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano published a letter claiming the cover-up of abuse within the church reached all the way to the top and directly implicated the Pope himself. On Tuesday, August 14th, a grand jury in Pennsylvania revealed that Catholic priests had been abusing children and covering it up for decades. Some as young as 18 months old. Over 40 years, resulting in more than 1,000 victims. It was a coordinated effort among priests to silence victims and protect predators. The grand jury concluded that a succession of Catholic bishops and other church leaders shielded the church by not reporting child-abusing clergy to the police. Instead, they sent these pervert priests to so-called treatment facilities, which, according to the report, allowed hundreds of known child abusers to return to ministry. Think about that. Rather than allow them to face justice, the Catholic Church, by course of policy, deliberately protected these priests and moved them to other churches, where they were introduced to new, unwitting families and a fresh flock of trusting children. One pedophile priest, according to the New York Times report, finally agreed to step down after numerous complaints, but asked for and received a note of recommendation for his next choice of employment, Disneyland. Yes, the Catholic Church knowingly referred a child molester to work at Disneyland because of course they did. The truth is, there's no telling how large the true number of victims is because many never come forward. Abused children were marked with a cross so other priests would know the ones who had already been abused and were easy candidates, so to speak.
To make it easier to target their victims, the priests gave their favored boys gifts. Gold crosses to wear as necklaces. The crosses were markings of which boys had been groomed for abuse.
This is pure evil. Because of the statute of limitations, all but 2 of these pedophiles cannot be prosecuted despite still posing a threat to society.
The longer they covered it up, the less chance law enforcement could prosecute these predators because the statute of limitations would run. As a direct consequence of the systematic cover-up by senior church officials, almost every instance of child sexual abuse we found is too old to be prosecuted.
Some of these predators have raped hundreds of victims, hundreds of lives destroyed, and the church does everything in its power not only to shelter the abusers from justice, but to keep them in positions where the abuse can continue as long as possible.
Child abuse is not defined as a crime, but as a sin. What the crime is under canon law is to talk about it. We often hand out material to people, to families going into Catholic churches, saying, you have to know that if your child is harmed here, the priest is under an obligation to the Pope to cover it up and not tell the police. I mean, what kind of organization could get away with having an official policy of aiding and abetting child rapists in their ranks?
A diabolical one.
Exactly.
But as terrifying as this is, it goes much deeper than the media will ever let on. This type of abuse is somehow ingrained in the priesthood itself, as if priests feel somehow entitled to this behavior, almost like some kind of sick sacrament. In fact, one victim practically said as much on a recent interview by Democracy Now!
I have to say that there has to be a part of the church that feels that that is their benevolent right of some kind. I really just, it's starting to seem like there is a percentage of the church that feels like it is their divine right to do this. It is so systemically huge.
South Park also hinted at a deeper connection between all of the sexual abuse cases in the Catholic Church. The priest and clergy feel as though it is part of the Catholic tradition to rape children.
Yes, we've got to stop these boys from going to the public. They've got to know to keep their mouths shut. Right, and so, well, wait a minute, what? It's okay, Father Maxey, we're all priests here, the doors are closed. Well, for the love of God, are you all saying that you have engaged in inappropriate relations with your altar boys? We are here to bring the light of God, not harm the innocent. I'm serious.
Father, having sex with boys is part of the Catholic priest's way of life.
Yeah.
Well, I was 40 years an insider in this church. I was 23 years in the religious life and 14 as a priest. And I knew what was going on the inside, and it was just abject corruption from the get-go. This church is a criminal enterprise that actually covers up the massive sexual abuse of children for centuries.
In an 11-page letter published Sunday, Vigano, the retired Vatican ambassador to the United States, called for the Pope to resign, claiming he told the pontiff in 2013 that Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, then Archbishop of D.C., was a serial predator, and that corruption and cover-up in the Catholic Church goes all the way to the top. I speak now because corruption has reached the top of the church hierarchy, Vigano said. He calls for the Pope to resign, saying Francis knowingly protected child abusers, claiming Francis knew McCarrick was a depraved serial predator, and not only did nothing about it, he gave him a coveted job as a Vatican envoy. 2 American archbishops have come forward and confirmed Vigano's accounts. This is him, McCarrick, the predator priest. He has since resigned but is still free, walking around, still likely a threat to society. How much more evidence do we need that this man is pure evil? The Pope has still not even addressed these accusations, as if ignoring them will make them go away. Another sickening aspect behind this is the money the Church pays out over these cases. Reportedly, the Vatican has spent over $4 billion to settle sexual abuse cases so far. That's coming from the nickels and dimes of the tithing faithful. The Vatican hoards untold wealth. The Pope flies around in a private jet, and yet he wants us to believe they care about the poor and starving. So when that collection plate comes around, you know your hard-earned money is doing great things. Compensating victims of the priests transferred from parish to parish so they can continue their predatory behavior, and paying lawyers to defend them. But there's a much darker aspect to all this that no one will mention. The connection to trauma-based mind control, aka MKUltra. MKUltra survivor and whistleblower Kathy O'Brien has spoken extensively about her abuse at the hands of perverted priests and her Catholic/Jesuit-based mind control.
Mine was horrific and horrendous, and it was based on what the Himmler research had learned about the effects of trauma on the human mind. It's what the Catholics had long since learned about effects of trauma on the human mind through the Spanish Inquisition and the kind of tortures that they were using back to the Crusades in the early days. They knew the effects of trauma on the human mind. When we were in Italy for the translation of our book in Italy, it was a very pivotal time in Italy when the Catholic child abuse scandal was brought to light, and they realized that the abuse of the children was being used for mind control manipulation.
Don't forget that it was the infamous Catholic-run Boys Town in Nebraska that was heavily involved in the Franklin scandal in the 80s. Children from Boys Town were being used to blackmail prominent politicians.
But King used Boys Town not just as a source of young boys for his business, he prostituted them at sex and drug orgies. Paul Benassi was a victim of King's abuse. He was also sent by King to lure Boys Town youngsters off campus.
Larry King was one of the underlings of the CIA, involved in a specific program recruiting particularly young boys, particularly a particular kind of boy, who were then used in a kind of mental programming, brainwashing, if you would, that we were doing, to use them for such things as assassination, such things as drug dealing, things,
that sounds like
sex, blackmail, so on and so forth. And I believe, yeah, mind control thing. You know, like Manchurian Candidate. You remember that old movie where they?
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, I think that is an integral part of this.
One piece of information hints at a satanic motive behind the abuse. The corrupt clergy are accused of conducting sacrilegious rituals that mock the Eucharist. This is a form of satanic rite known as a Black Mass, and typically involves depraved and disgusting acts, such as eating feces to mock the body of Christ.
But see, this group has they have infiltrated many places. Look at the Catholic system and worldwide all the sex abuse cases. Guess what? They're not just sex abuse. When they go to the courts, they say leave the satanic side out, the black rooms out. Malachi Martin knew about this. William Kennedy knew about the black rooms inside the Catholic system. And we got to go back again to the rat lines. Many of the Nazi soldiers became fake priests and infiltrated.
Recently, identical priest abuse cases have come to light in Ireland and Chile that have destroyed thousands more lives. How long will we allow scandal after scandal to come out and continue to act like this is just a one-off? How many bad apples does it take before we realize the whole tree is rotten?
This is an old problem, and if you follow this problem to its foundation, it will lead you to the highest corridors of the Vatican.
It is time for this organization to be shut down for its centuries of crimes against humanity. The Vatican needs to be raided, its criminal syndicate of money laundering and child rape exposed. Instead of launching a massive internal investigation and turning over current abusers to the police, the Pope sits on his golden throne of lies while hundreds of thousands suffer.
The Pope has a bigger agenda. He's got to get on with other things of talking about the environment and protecting migrants and carrying on the work of the church. We're not going to go down a rabbit hole on this.
But the Pope poses a problem. According to canon law, the pontiff cannot be judged by any civil or religious authority. He is beyond the law.
It will be, I think, an important task to work out how to bring the Pope beneath the law by arguing either that the Vatican is not a real state or that the degree of his negligence over the child abuse scandal does involve him in a crime against humanity.
I truly feel we are living in a time of revealing, and no matter how hard these corrupt institutions try, they cannot stop their despicable deeds from coming to light. Not only in the Vatican, but in DC, Hollywood, and elsewhere.